My girlfriend's parents arranged a marriage for us despite us only being together for 2 weeks. I met my girlfriend, Sarah, at church, and I swear it was love at first sight. We developed feelings for each other, and it wasn't long until she became my girlfriend. Things were great. I saw her as potentially the love of my life. But then I met her parents, and everything went south. One of the first things her dad said to me was, "The wedding is set for 3 months' time. That should be adequate time for you to prepare to take our daughter's hand in marriage." I chuckled, thinking this was just some joke, but he continued, "My wife and I always dreamed of our daughter belonging to a good man, and you are one we are certain of. Why wait?" That's when I realized he wasn't joking. He and his wife had arranged a marriage for us despite us only dating less than 3 weeks. Sarah seemed very calm when he said this. Later that evening, I pulled Sarah aside to talk. I asked her if she knew anything about them wanting us to get married, and she looked shocked when I asked the question. She hesitated, then told me she didn't think they expected us to marry so quickly. She went on to say that they planned it without her knowledge. I asked her if her parents did that to any other guy she dated, and she said, "Are you trying to accuse me of trapping you in a marriage? I told you I didn't know why they said that. Can we just leave it at that?" And that's exactly what I did. We went back into the living room with her parents and watched a movie until it was time for me to go home. Later that night, I kept thinking about how fast this was moving and knew I needed more help before making a decision. I decided to talk to my parents about it. The next morning, I went to my dad first. I told him that Sarah's parents wanted me to marry her. He asked which one it was, and I told him, "The girl from church, the one that you would always carry an extra chair for," he asked, laughing. "Yes," I said, rolling my eyes. He went on to tell me that it was a little early for marriage and that it would be rough, especially since we were young. Just as I was about to agree with him, my mom came in and asked what we were talking about. I caught her up to speed, and she told my dad that they got married right out of high school as well. Then he reminded her that they dated all through high school. Sarah and I had been dating for 2 weeks now. Eventually, they both concluded that I should break up with her so I wouldn't have the hassle of getting married too quickly. They said that the parents forcing us to get married without knowing who I was a red flag as well. I told them how much I liked her and how long I'd been waiting to date her, and they wanted me to blow it after only 2 weeks of dating. My dad's usual silly banter switched. He told me that if I chose to be with this girl after having a lot of friction at the beginning of the relationship, I would regret it. My mom reluctantly agreed and told me to make the right decision and break up with her. I told them that I would think about it. I had no intention of breaking up with her, but they wouldn't understand. I went upstairs to talk to Sarah on the phone. I knew I still wanted to date her, but I wasn't ready for marriage yet. She picked up the phone and seemed happy. I asked her how her day was, and she told me it was great. She and her parents were looking online for wedding dresses. I felt a lump in my throat. I told her that was great and that I was glad she was happy. We continued talking about our day, and then I asked her if it would be cool if I came over the next day, and she said, yeah. I had to tell her parents how I felt before they went too far. We said our goodbyes, and I began thinking of ways to convince her parents in the bathroom mirror for what felt like hours. The next day, when I felt I had perfected my argument, I went over to Sarah's. Her parents greeted me at the door and told me to come in. I asked where Sarah was, and they told me she was upstairs and would be down shortly. My heart started beating a little bit faster as I asked them if I could speak to them while we waited for Sarah. Her dad said, "Sure, son, hit me with your best shot." I started by saying how Sarah was a lovely girl and how I enjoyed being with her. Then I told them that I felt it was too soon for marriage. In that instant, I saw her dad's face ball up. I continued speaking. I told them that I would love to continue to date their daughter with the hopes of marriage, but I couldn't get married at that moment. They asked if I planned to leave their daughter, and I said that I didn't, but they accused me even more. They said that I just wanted her for her body, and if I planned on being with her, then marriage now shouldn't be an issue for me. I felt the rage coming from every angle. They treated me like I had set their house on fire. They told me that I would marry their daughter now and that this was the end of the discussion. I tried to tell them again that I wasn't ready and how they should possibly build a relationship with my parents first to see if that's a household they'd want to blend, but they weren't hearing it. They were convinced that we were getting married. My blood was boiling and I started seeing red. They were forcing me to marry a girl I had dated for 2 weeks. They weren't being logical in this decision and were just obsessed with doing it the right way. To avoid being disrespectful, I excused myself and went home. I texted Sarah that I was sorry that I couldn't see her that day and would come back once I cooled off. She said she understood, and I asked her if she could come over the next day because the last thing I wanted to see was her parents. She agreed, and the next day came. She was at my door with her big smile. I asked to speak with her in my room, and as we walked upstairs, she told me that her parents had told her about our conversation the previous day. I told her I wanted to ask her opinion on it, and she said she could see where they were coming from. She said they delivered it poorly, but the goal was still there, to get married. I paused for a moment and turned around to look at her. I couldn't believe what she was saying. I asked her if she felt comfortable marrying someone she'd only dated for 2 weeks, and she said again that it shouldn't matter since we both plan on marrying each other anyway. She tried to convince me of all the reasons why getting married wouldn't be a bad idea. She argued that it would make us more financially stable in the long run and that we'd have a forever companion in one another. She was serious. I asked her how long she had been thinking about this. That's when she told me she was thinking about it when she saw me at church and didn't want to scare me off. She said she and her parents would always notice how nice and caring I was at church to her and that she needed a husband like that. She had been plotting on me while I waited for her to be my girlfriend. I said it would be wild to get married right now and tried to explain all the reasons that I had presented to her parents, but her choice was made. She was determined to be with me. I told her I couldn't do it anymore and was over the relationship. I could hear my dad's voice from the other day telling me that I would regret being in this relationship, and I honestly had. She called me selfish and said her parents were right about me. She said I only wanted to play with her emotions, and I told her that wasn't the case. I wasn't ready for marriage, and I felt like I was being forced into it. She didn't care and stormed out of the house. Just then, my mom brought in some cookies she baked for us. I told her that Sarah Sarah and I were done, and she dropped the sheet of cookies on the ground in disbelief. I told her that she and Dad were right and that we were moving too fast. I was so caught up in liking her that I overlooked a lot of things. I got a call from Sarah that night, and she asked if we were really done. I told her I would be if her parents forced us to get married so soon, and she cried on the phone with me. I felt bad and almost changed my mind to make her happy, but I had to stand firm. She would call or come over to my house the next few weeks to bring me some of my favorite treats or ask to hang out with me. I didn't want to tell her no because I really enjoyed her company. When she came over, we watched movies together and played board games. We'd have a lot of fun, but without fail, when it was almost time for her to go home, she would ask if I still wanted just to remain friends. She would remind me that we would always have fun when we were together and that we could do that forever if I wanted to. I would have to tell her no each time, and she would look sad and leave. Each time, I had to chase after her to make sure she was okay. But after a while, I realized that it shouldn't be my concern since we weren't dating. That's when her parents would start showing up at my house, trying to talk to me and my parents. They would say that my parents raised a good son and that breaking up such a great couple was a mistake. They would try to bring peace offerings constantly. Sarah's mom knows that my family likes chocolate cake, and she would bring one over almost every week. Each time, it felt like she was trying to bribe us. Their last hope in me dating Sarah again was one afternoon. They showed up with Sarah and asked to talk to me. I told them yes and let them in. They said they would love for us to get back together and have seen Sarah sad since our breakup. They told me that they would be okay with us casually dating as long as we both planned to get married to one another and wouldn't do anything intimate before that point. I looked at Sarah. She looked desperate for my answer. I really liked her as a person, and the opportunity was presented right in front of me. Best believe I took it. She hugged me tightly, and her parents looked displeased with how close we were but masked it with nervous smiles. We were back together again, and even though it had started rocky, I was excited that we were all on the same page. The next few months were the best of my life. Sarah and I did everything together. We applied for colleges, got food, and went to our favorite concerts together. I got us 2 tickets to her favorite indie band concert for her birthday a few weeks ago, and she was so happy. I loved making her smile. Her parents were happy with how I was treating her as well. They said they've never seen her so happy. One day, while we were at her parents' house, her dad told me how glad he was that I was with their daughter and had slipped a couple of sons into our conversation. He hadn't called me that since the first time Sarah and I dated. I didn't think much of it at first, so I let him call me that. The following day, Sarah and her mom were watching a show about women picking out wedding dresses. Her mom was saying how beautiful she would look in one right now. Then her mom goes to the closet, pulls out her old wedding dress, and tells Sarah to try it on. She looked stunning. The dress looked like it was made for her. They asked me what I thought about it, and I told her she was beautiful. A few weeks later, they started asking me if I would be ready to pop the question soon, and that's when my bubble of delusion popped. I realized they were trying to make me marry her again, and I did not have it. I asked them if the subliminals that they were showing earlier were a ploy to get me to marry their daughter. They brought up the same argument that they had months ago. If I planned on marrying her, the time I did it should not matter. They said I should have known that they didn't change. They just wanted me to be with their daughter again, and I could see right through it. I told them that I would not be marrying their daughter now, and they were heated. They called me ungrateful and said to me that I didn't deserve their daughter if she was going to have to wait years to get married. We argued until I realized we were talking in circles, and I decided to speak to Sarah about it. She said the exact same thing she said months ago. I decided to break up with Sarah. It hurts more now than before because I really wanted to spend my life with her, and over the past few months we have built a great bond with each other, but I suppose life got in the way. Her parents didn't bother trying again to get back with me, and although Sarah did, even attempting to seduce me with explicit photos on a few occasions, I never gave in.